I'm just starting a call with 300 people. What's up? Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are just waiting a couple minutes for people to join, and we will begin in just a moment. I love this part, all the silence before we start talking.
First person to say something loses, right?
This is exciting. We have about 250 people RSVP'd here on our Zoom call with another 600 interested in watching us on Facebook. So this is a very exciting, I think it's our first Napa Valley Vintners thing done specifically for India. So we're very excited about today. And Alfred, thank you for joining us on this session. We're very excited you could be here. He just sent us a message. Just a couple housekeeping things. You can message the panelists, and you could also message each other using the chat function. And so if there are any questions or comments or any discussion, please put them there. And then there's also the Q&A feature in the Zoom call at the bottom. And I will be checking the Facebook feed periodically as well. So if you're joining in from Facebook, I will be watching that as well. Feel free to make comments in the chat, and we can see if we can address those as we go. So feel free, let's make this interactive. Let's wait just a couple more minutes. Bruce, someone's chatting with you in the comments here.
From Chennai.
Yes.
Yeah.
From Chennai. She met you a couple years ago at a dinner in Chennai. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Anirudh.
Okay, let's go ahead and begin. So, greetings, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. I think this is our first Napa Valley Vintners session, our first Napa Valley Appellation session dedicated specifically to trade and wine lovers in India. And we are super excited to be doing this. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sonal, for leading our discussion. Thank you, Bruce, Priyanka, and Michael, for being here and sharing your knowledge, your passion, and your wines with us today. So we really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to the next hour or so on this Zoom call. My name is Connor Best. I'm the International Marketing Manager for the Napa Valley Vintners, and I cover basically the world, bringing Napa Valley around the world alongside all of these fantastic producers. I get to travel with Bruce and Michael and Priyanka to Canada and Japan, and to Hong Kong and Europe. Haven't made it to India yet, but I can't wait to do so. I know Michael and Bruce have done marketing in India for many years now, so they do have some specific experience, and of course, we're broadcasting today from Napa Valley, and it is a very interesting time in the Napa Valley. Not only is harvest just beginning, I think, Bruce, you brought in your first Sauvignon Blanc today, you said. Michael, have you brought anything in yet? I think you're on mute, Michael, but...
Yeah, we started on Monday.
And Priyanka, have you brought anything in yet?
No, this Friday is the big day.
First day. So not only is it right at the beginning of harvest and everyone is incredibly excited, but if 2020 couldn't get any weirder, the weather has been absolutely crazy in Napa. A heat spike, some rainstorms, which are unheard of in Napa Valley, and with those rainstorms came lightning. And unfortunately, there is a fire burning above the hills and the eastern hills of Napa Valley. So we're keeping an eye on that. All three of our winemakers and their facilities and their vineyards are safe, but we are keeping an eye on that. And so our heart goes out to our fellow members of the Napa Valley community who may be affected by that. So we'll just you may see that in the news periodically over the next week or so. I'm very excited to welcome Sonal Holland, who is India's first and only master of wine. She's here there was no better person, she's the perfect person to lead our discussion today. She's the founder of Sonal Holland Wine Academy, which offers wine education and consultancy to leading luxury hotels and brands. Soho Wine Club, that curates exclusive events and tastings for discerning palates in India. And she founded the Indian Wine Awards that ranks the best wines and restaurant wine programs in the country. Sonal is also the owner of a chain of modern retail stores in the important consumption markets of Mumbai and Bangalore. Sonal's been listed among the top 50 most powerful women in the industry luxury market and has won several awards for her incredible journey to becoming one in a billion. Sonal was in Napa Valley in November 2018 with a group of 45 masters of wine who I'm told were astounded by Napa Valley's ever-dynamic styles of wines, legendary hospitality, and its strong spirit that rises and shines brightly against all odds. So thank you, Sonal. We are so excited for this discussion, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Connor, and thank you so much for that incredible introduction. It is my extreme privilege to be here today, to be called upon for a discussion on an exploration of Napa Valley, a region that personally I've enjoyed visiting back in 2018, as you said. And I'm delighted to be collaborating with the Napa Valley Vintners for this wonderful showcase that's about to last for the next 60 odd minutes. I thought to place today's discussion in the right context, the best and the most fairest thing to do would be to first start with what does US mean to most of us Indians? By the way, I'm not in Napa Valley. I'm in Mumbai and I'm in my home, and it's about 9 o'clock in the evening. But coming back to US, India has always enjoyed a reciprocal, a fair, and a mutually admiring relationship with the US. We've always looked at USA as the place where dreams and careers and lives happen and come true. So for many Indians, a lot of them have second homes in the USA. They have children, their kids who study in the US at the universities there, and some of them also migrate and become winemakers. So it's really, there's a huge admirable nexus between India and the US. So invariably what tends to happen is a lot of us Indians enjoy traveling to the US, whether it's for business or for pleasure or just for pure shopping or to spend time with our family members who live there. And so invariably when we travel to the US, we end up spending extended periods of time there. And so for a lot of Indians, our first tryst with international wine is often a Californian wine. And if I look within the Californian wines, of course, Napa Valley enjoys a place of premium, prestige, and stature. So I know so many Indians and friends and colleagues who've traveled to the US, they come back and they say, I'm looking for a great Napa Valley wine to drink here in India because I tried it while I was there and I'm absolutely astounded. For us, Napa Valley often becomes and ends up being the benchmark of very premium quality wines. And we're dazzled by the growth and the success of Napa Valley as a premium wine producing region, particularly over the last 20 to 30 years. As Connor shared, I've personally traveled to the Napa Valley twice actually, once before I became a wine professional and one more recently in 2018 with a group of MWs. And both times I've been absolutely astounded by the wines that it offers. And so for me, it's a real moment of joy today to get more in depth and sort of really explore and understand and gain tremendous insights from our stellar lineup of speakers that we have today. It's truly a privilege and it's truly an honor for me to be in conversation with such incredible speakers and names which are etched in the success story of Napa Valley. So let's discover Napa Valley, guys, through their eyes and through their experiences. So on that note, I'll quickly introduce our speakers for the evening. We have Bruce Cakebread, who's the co-owner at Cakebread Cellars. Bruce has worked alongside his father during the founding years of the family winery in 1973. In 1979, Bruce took over as the chief winemaker, and after graduating with a degree in viticulture and winemaking from UC Davis. He eventually took over as the winery's president and COO, and has been leading the company's operations both within the domestic market as well as in the international export and distribution markets. Today, he serves as a co-owner and as a board member. And Cakebread wines, of course, are world-renowned. They're extraordinarily sought after, both in the US and across the world, and they're almost synonymous with Napa Valley. So we're extremely privileged, Bruce, to have you here on our panel today. And we can't wait to hear from you, both about your experiences back there in Napa Valley, but also about your business of selling wine or distributing or promoting wines in India. Right. Coming to our second speaker, Priyanka French. Despite her last name, she's actually a Mumbai native, and she has studied she's a Master of Science in Viticulture and Enology, and soon after she joined Signorello Estates, where she is the chief winemaker. So she's currently focusing on precision viticulture and restrained winemaking, and has been overseeing the construction of a brand new winery, which is going to be as massive as 28,000 square feet, along with, the winery and caves and whatnot at Signorello Estates. Signorello Estates was founded in 1977, and they represent the old world style, which is in particular the French style of winemaking. They're 100% estate grown fruit that goes into the wines, and they are not available in India yet. But we were just discussing a few minutes before we went broadcast live that today's call to action is going to be, guys, to help find a great importer for Priyanka French who can start importing Signorello wines, which are amazing. All right, so that's going to be the key takeaway among many others. Coming to our third and also very, very important and eminent speaker, Michael Honig, who is the president and CEO at the Honig Vineyards. He first became inspired by wine, spending his summers and weekends at his grandfather's Rutherford vineyard, so much so that he left college at the tender age of 21 to start trading in Sauvignon Blanc wines and take over the family business eventually. He has now completed nearly 33 years in the wine industry. Michael, we're quickly calculating your age right now, just by that introduction. And today manages the wine, he's now completed 33 years in the industry. He manages 360-degree of the operations at Honig Vineyards. And his magic mantra is, don't be too afraid to fail. What a wonderful thought. Honig wines are available in India, and they're massively enjoyed by people who enjoy the good life. So more about that as we speak. Before I start the forum for asking questions, firstly, a huge welcome to all three of you. And what a privilege. Thank you for being here today and in conversation with me. A quick overview of Napa Valley, which I must say is a very daunting process, given that I'm in the midst of Napa Valley legends, for me to try and give an overview of Napa Valley, but I'll try and be bullet points and really quick. So Napa Valley is located quite close to San Francisco, guys. It's about 60 miles, which is 96.5 kilometers, since we understand more in terms of kilometers. It's northeast of San Francisco, and it's about an hour, hour and a half drive, very easy to take. And guys, it's not far from San Fran, our favorite city, right? Napa is a long and narrow strip of land, much like Mumbai, actually. It kind of gets wider in some parts, but it's basically 48 kilometers long. And in some parts, it kind of measures between 1.6 kilometers to 8 kilometers in width. So a lot like Mumbai, actually, you know, it's kind of a long trip, and it kind of runs at a slight slant going from southeast to the northwest. It's surrounded by mountains on the east and the west. On the north, in the southern end, they have the San Pablo Bay, and at the northern end, they have the Mount St. Helena. The Napa AVA was among the first in California to be named and designated in 1881. It enjoys a dry Mediterranean climate, which makes it very unique because there are very few wine producing regions in the world that enjoy this. And what that literally means is a dry Mediterranean climate generally tantamounts and equates to the potential to make extraordinarily amazing, good, high quality wines. And that automatically places Napa Valley within its best potential to be able to produce such wines that they can boast of. Napa has a remarkable diversity of both microclimates, and this comes from a variety of soils. It again boasts of a diversity of almost 100 different soil types, different compositions, which kind of lends a different stylistic touch to their wines. But also they have a lot of different expositions, because it can be, there can be a play of altitudes in the region as well. So there is at sea, they have vineyards planted from absolute at sea level up to 2,600 feet above sea level. So this kind of, and in relation to where it faces in terms of the sunshine, it kind of allows different exposure and a variety of microclimates that creates a huge diversity and excitement in the wines that come from Napa Valley. Napa Valley has over 475 plus wineries that grow several different grape varieties, including Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Pinot Noir, Zinfandel, Cabernet Franc. The list is endless in reds, and Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and so many others in whites. One amazing fact is that Napa Valley is among probably the smallest wine growing regions in the world, but what an impressive reputation it enjoys in the wine world. So it's kind of small in size, but big on stature. And it is, it although has only 1/6 of its land planted in comparison to Bordeaux, so it's only 1/6 in size in terms of planted acreage in comparison to Bordeaux, nearly round today in terms of reputation runs shoulder to shoulder. And what is amazing is that 95% of these wineries are family owned. What does that mean for us, guys? Family owned means more passion, more commitment to quality, more environmentally conscious people, and constant innovation to try and to stay on top of the game. So that's what it's all about. Napa Valley, which is small in size, huge in stature, and even huger on the impact it makes in the wine world. So on that note, I'm again welcome to all our speakers, and I will, if you're ready for questions, I could perhaps start off with ladies first. Priyanka, I'll go with you with the first question. So the most important question, the most imminent question that must be asked before, and the nation wants to know.
Nation wants to know.
The nation wants, you know what I'm talking about? The guy from India.
Of course, nation janna chahta hai.
The nation wants to know, are you, when you say you're a Mumbai native, are you from South Mumbai or North Mumbai? Exactly which part of Mumbai? Because that's going to be the defining point of this discussion over the next 60 minutes.
So I'm born and raised in South Mumbai. My father worked at the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. So
awesome.
We enjoyed the area of South Bombay growing up. But now that he's retired, we have moved to North Bombay. So I think with that, my claim to being a Mumbaiker is a little more sealed now that I've covered the city geographically, but born and raised in Bombay. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I thought I'll start on that humorous note, but more importantly, tell us about your journey from Mumbai to Napa Valley. How did you end up at Signorello Estates, and what inspired you to join them? Tell us about your journey.
Thank you. And thank you, Sonal, for moderating this panel today. This is something that, Connor and the Napa Valley Vintners have been thinking and wanting to do for a while. And for me, going back to India and having a connection with the Indian wine industry has always been extremely important. So I'm just so thrilled to be here today. And thank you to everyone who's joining us for this seminar. My name is Priyanka French now, but Priyanka Dar before I got married, born and raised in Bombay. I studied food engineering and technology at the Institute of Chemical Technology, formerly UDCT in Matanga, and that's when I went to Sula Vineyards and kind of, you know, fell in absolute love. It was during harvest and we got to walk the winery and smell all the things and, you know, walk onto the tasting room that then looks over the vineyards and the lake, and, you know, the Bollywood in me just came out. So it was just love at first sight, if you will. And I decided to actively get into winemaking in my third year of undergraduate degree, which is when I started applying to different schools. So came in 2009 to Napa to study, to UC Davis to do my master's in viticulture and enology. And after that, worked in California and a few other regions in the world, kind of trying to gain experience. Came back to Bombay for a while because that was always my intention, was to come home and to work and, you know, hopefully make wine in India. And I actually met you at that time, Sonal. I was a student as well, and Sanjay Menon had just set up a master class, and I was helping him because I was his assistant for a few months. And then life and love kind of took me out of the country, and I ended up back in Napa Valley. Worked here for about 6 years now, and I've been with Signorello for just about 2. So I joined early 2019. And this is our second harvest coming up here now, starting at the end of this week. So very excited to be here with Signorello. I think you did a really great job of kind of condensing the property. Of course, it's, you know, one of the older wineries in the region, but it's at a very unique point, I feel, right now in its journey, because we suffered immense physical destruction during the 2017 fires. So the winery, the hospitality room, and the owner's residence was completely burnt during the 2017 fires. But with the kind of optimism and determination that Ray Signorello, the owner, has, he decided to really use this opportunity to restructure, re-examine, and redesign the estate. So he always said that, you know, when you start off as an older winery, and Bruce will have a lot of thoughts to this as well, you kind of, you build it piece by piece, and you do it in a way that works for the moment and not necessarily for long term. And so now we're sitting down with our construction and really focusing for what's the long-term future of this estate.
That's amazing. Priyanka, I want you to know that you are a real picture of hope, just that story about your transitioning. I know there are so many of us who are listening in, who are going to be inspired by that, because they're all, you know, so many of us are trying to still work out how do we sort of carve our own paths in our careers and make our way. And you know, Napa Valley is such a fantastic destination to end up with. And about the new winery, you know, any new beginning brings with it a new level of excitement, a new start, you know, a new level of hope. So good luck. I mean, I'm sure it's going really well. Bruce, I'd like to quickly ask you, tell us more about, I mean, what a background, firstly. I mean, that is a really enviable picture behind you. So if you could tell us more about your winery, and when and how did your family come to Napa Valley?
So our first vintage was 1973, and my mother and father started the winery, and we started out with just 4 barrels of Chardonnay. How we landed here in Napa Valley, my grandfather started auto repair in downtown Oakland, across the bay from San Francisco, back in 1926, and my grandfather and father ran that business for 50 plus years. Good friends of my grandparents, the Sturdivants, moved up to Napa Valley, where the winery is based today, back in the 50s. And when they wanted to retire from their raising cattle up in the hills above Lake Hennessy, and then also they had 20 acres here right on Highway 29. My parents bought the 20 acres, and Helen and Jack Sturdivant lived in the house till they both passed on. It was about that same time I was getting out of high school, studied pomology, which is tree fruits, and then transferred up to UC Davis for enology. And then we just started making wine kind of at nights, you know, on weekends. And we're just very fortunate to be able to grow up with the U.S. wine consumer, learning about wines about that same time in the early 70s. And just, we've all kind of grown up together, you know, drinking wine and learning about wine and food. So it's been a really exciting, you know, almost 50 years coming up now to be able to kind of be able to grow through that and just see the changes, how wine's perceived and drank and enjoyed, and then to be able to share it around the world is truly, you know, when I got out of high school, I never thought I would be traveling to India to sell wine. It was just wasn't on my radar screen. So,
yeah, but you have been available in India now for a number of years, and quite successfully so. And like in so many other countries, it's astonishing how quickly Cakebread Cellars has been adopted and loved and admired across the world in so many markets. So it's really an astonishing story of success in a span of 47 years. I quickly worked that math out because 73 is my birth year. So that's not hard for me to calculate. But thank you for sharing that with us. Michael, I'll come on to you, particularly because your importer has just signed in as well. So I'm sure he's very keen to hear you speak as well, among others. But do tell us your story, Michael. Tell us about how you and your family got to Napa Valley.
Well, my family arrived in Napa, well, or at least my grandfather, Louis, bought our property in the early 60s. My great-grandfather had started an advertising firm that was based in San Francisco. And over the years, it developed to a larger firm. In the 50s, they started doing some work with some California wineries. And my grandfather, who was very hands-on with the business, but primarily focused on the marketing and of the brands, fell in love with wine through his ad campaigns. So he bought the property with the intent of making wine. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years after the purchase. So my parents and aunt and uncle decided to memorialize my dream. And after growing grapes for about 20 years, in 1980, started making their own wine under the Hone label. And at that time, we actually focused on just one varietal, which was Sauvignon Blanc, which 40 years later seems like, oh my God, what visionaries. At the time, it was really the dumbest idea around because, you know, even Mr. Mondavi, who was an incredible marketer, rebranded his to called it Fumé Blanc because there really wasn't a big market for Napa Sauvignon Blanc in the early 80s. So a few years after they'd made this decision, they realized it was not working as a business and they're either going to have to get out of the wine business or change the direction. And as you mentioned earlier, I was a college student. I was 21, didn't know anything about wine, certainly drank a lot, but it wasn't Napa wine by any means. But I had a real passion for this land because growing up in San Francisco, this was the property that we would come as a family on weekends and summers. And I knew if we lost that vineyard, we would lose that whole connection we had as in my grandfather's legacy, basically. So I asked my dad if I could get involved, and the rules are different here than many countries and many other states, but here you can basically self-distribute. So I could sell directly to your stores, which is a unique rule. I found that I could do that in California, so I bought an old pickup truck, and I would go out to restaurants and stores in San Francisco and put my little suit on and I have my little bottle of wine because at the time we just had Sauvignon Blanc, and I go out and tell my story. And after the merchant that I was telling my story to would stop laughing because people couldn't realize, wait, you're in Napa Valley, you're surrounded, you know, Cakebread and Camus and all these Ingle Neckel, these incredible producers. Why are you making Sauvignon Blanc? But again, I would persevere and I would just go out every day for years. I still do it. Bruce and I still carry wine bags. But you know, we basically I'd go out, I'd try to sell whatever I could. The next day I'd run home, I'd load up this old truck and deliver it, whatever I'd sold the day before. So I've done that now since I'm 37 years, I guess now I've been doing this. I've also been able to engage other family members. I'm third generation. We have a few fourth generation family members involved. We've branched into Cabernet, which we'll be tasting a little later. But we've really focused on the two varietals, and that's how I got here.
What an incredible story, and thank you for sharing that with us. It's quite, you know, your passion towards the business really shines through, and I now understand what you mean by your magic mantra, which is don't be afraid to fail, because you've actually worked it at the grassroots level. So I'm sure with the glory came a lot of setbacks, a lot of challenges along the way. So I just wanted to quickly ask you, what's been your single largest learning in the wine business in the last 33 years? I mean, I'm sure many, but one that sticks out.
You know, the problem, I don't know, it's hard. There's so many. And I guess the challenge I'm facing right now, we talked about this a little earlier, is with all the things going on right now, it's hard to have a positive outlook on much of anything. But I guess what I love about this is that the three of us on this call, make a living, breathing product that we have our names on these labels. These are not just widgets that some manufacturer makes. These are brands that we put our heart and soul into, our whole livelihood. And what I was doing today was talking about how difficult it is today, but at least we have our kids to look forward for the future. So, I mean, there's so many different things that have been challenging, but I think, every day is a challenge in our business. And I think Bruce would attest to that, as well as Priyanka.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that, Bruce.
Well, and the other challenge, and Bruce and I have this challenge. It's similar to the Mumbai challenge. We're north. We're Rutherford, and those goddamn people down in Oakville, south of us, are always trying to take our glory. And I'm tired of it, right, Bruce? We're going to fight. We're north. We're fighting.
I can assure you one thing. And again, I'm not trying to draw any bias, but we Indian people in the trade know more about the Rutherford dust than anything else about Napa Valley. So you're good.
Yeah, those Oakville, they have no dust in Oakville. They have no game.
We're still learning we're still discovering Oakville, but Rutherford dust, it's in our books. It's textbook, so we know about it. So that's great. Okay. Bruce, I meant to ask you, you've been selling wines in India for a number of years. You've been well represented through your importers. What have been some of your learnings, some challenges, and what do you see as the biggest opportunity in India?
So it's kind of, we're fortunate. I was in Vin Expo 20 plus years ago and got to meet with Aman and Madhulika and form that partnership there. So I've been very, very fortunate to work with them over these many years. And what I enjoy about going to India is, one is learning about different foods, but also impressed on how much people want to learn and gain knowledge about the winemaking process, about Napa Valley, and to be able to have that conversation. So it's always exciting to go there and always learn something, and just being introduced some really great foods, different flavors. And so that's what makes it exciting to be able to do that. And also when you travel to Delhi or Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, then people come to visit us here at the winery too, and that is truly a great joy to be able to show off. I can go and talk a long time in these markets, but when they come to Napa Valley and be able to see it for themselves, to me that kind of completes the loop and makes it pretty exciting.
Yeah, the connection that you form through this exchange, it can be quite incredible, and it builds lasting relationships. If somebody visits a wine region, and then sort of drinks wines there or tastes the wines there and then comes back home and finds those wines, it's at another level altogether, that connection that you have with that particular wine. So yeah, definitely. Great. Priyanka, are you sipping on any wine this evening, by the way? I thought
I am. I have the 2018, virtual background, 2018 Hopes Cuvée Chardonnay, which is a really special bottle for us. It's kind of a little passion project. We have a 5-acre Chardonnay vineyard on our estate that was originally planted in 1980, which is some of the older vines on the southern part of Napa Valley where we are. And it's been a single vineyard, single block cuvée for over 40 years that Signorello has been making. It was named after Ray's mother, Hope Signorello, who he lost early in his life. And we have a couple of different clones on there, different ages of vines, and we have a lot of fun making this wine. So it's one of my favorites. It's what we're also going to start picking next week. So I thought a little pre-harvest inspiration was, due, and that's what I'm sipping on right now.
Awesome. And it's never too early or too late to be sipping on wine in any case, right? I wanted to ask you, Priyanka, because I was trying to read up a little bit more about the Hopes Cuvée Chardonnay, and I was fascinated. And sorry, I don't have a glass, but I know it's an astounding wine. But a lot of your winemaking philosophy revolves around low yields and for higher quality. And of course, we in the trade kind of understand it, but just for the benefit of everybody listening in, could you explain how you correlate that? What is the average age of your wines? And also, more importantly, your winemaking philosophy also revolves around an old world style, which is the French-inspired styles of wines. Why the need for that? And what exactly do you mean? If you could just clarify for us.
So a few different questions, and we will bring you a glass pretty soon. That's our call to action. I don't want to forget that.
Yes, guys, come on, looking for importers.
But yeah, so
on the chat.
Where we are located, Sonal, on the southern tip, we are closer to the Napa Valley River, which means our soils are pretty alluvial. They're quite rich, and so getting vine balance between how the vine grows as a plant and what the actual fruit that is held on the plant is something that's very important to me, especially as a farming practice. And so when we say, I think, low yields, that is something that the site tends to dictate as well. We're the only estate on that part that actually sits on a hillside that has a little bit of an elevation to it, and with that comes a lot of volcanic rock, a lot of rock in the subsoil. And so what we see is the vines tend to be naturally limited because of the site, and we like to keep that stress level going through the growing season, just to get a little more of that concentration of flavors. We find that with the lower yields and the smaller berries, we have very concentrated, impactful berries, and it results in really big, opulent wines. And so that's
and
the
you're
goal.
also using a lot of making wines from other varieties like Semillon and Malbecs and a few others that are relatively unknown as coming out of Napa Valley. Is that right?
Yes, so we have a Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend, which we do in a very unique style. It's about a 50-50 blend, so really sees a lot of aging potential because of that higher amount of Semillon in there. The Malbec we're now mainly using as a blender. It used to have its own label, but and with me coming on, and we brought Celia Welsh and Steve Mathiasen in to kind of really form a team for Signorello, and we decided that it had a really great place and just a great impact as a blender in our wines. I wanted to address the old world question that you posed, because I think that's it's a really great question, because I would definitely say my style of winemaking is very modern. I have no problems using technology. In fact, the more technology I can use, the more comfortable I am with the winemaking process. But at the same time, there is a focus and a desire to remain true to the site and to really express the flavors and express the capacity of the wine that the site really gives us. And so that's where that old world aspect comes into place. We are looking for wines with substance, but with a sense of place and time, and minimum intervention. So we're not doing a lot of fiddling around in the winery, a lot of native fermentations. We actually sat and isolated all of the yeasts from our vineyards this year. So who knows, we might have our own Signorello yeast here shortly, but that is always the intention, is to stay as pure as possible to the site.
Possible. No, that's great. I mean, again, your passion as a winemaker really shines through. It all comes out when you start to talk about the geology of the soils and the stress levels in the vines, and trying to make sure that you're optimizing the expression of the land and all of that. I have one white and red here with me. So I have the Cakebread Cellars Chardonnay here with me. Maybe we could do the white first. Bruce, will you taste with me, or do you have a glass of that?
Let's see, it's 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, so
okay.
Side, but I know this wine.
Never stopped you before.
But our Chardonnay comes from the southern end of Napa Valley. Sorry, Michael, but this would be way south in the Caneros region. And so what makes the Caneros region in Napa Valley unique is it has more base sediment soil, starting with the soils instead of the loamy kind of river wash that you'd see farther up valley. And so these heavier clays hold the moisture in the soil, which is great for white wines. And then you have the influence of the bay. The fog stays in there, comes in first and stays there longer. So it's a very maritime climate, so you get nice even temperatures there. And I think one of the classic descriptions with Chardonnay from Canaros is nice green apple, citrus. In warmer years, you get some apple pear, but it's still nice fresh acidity without being overly tart. So you have this nice balance of ripeness, but also fresh acidity that I think truly makes Canaros a great, great region for Chardonnay. And so that's where the Chardonnay comes from. We pick it at night. So the fruit comes in ice cold. We'll whole cluster press it, settle it so we get nice fine juice leaves, and then put it to barrels and barrel ferment, about 20-25% native yeast, and then it just stays in barrels for about 8 months. And then we bottle it up, and you'll age quite gracefully for that 3 to 6 to 10 years. And so that, to me, we have 4 different vineyards down in Canaros that we work from, and they're very consistent year after year. So that's the exciting thing about working with the same vineyards, estate vineyards, is you have that continuity. You can see them through different vintages. It's like seeing an old friend when they go dry. So it's exciting to work with the Chardonnay out of Canaros.
So this, I can't help but say it, but this is one wine that's always been in fashion. It's an eternally fashionable, ever evolving, sort of a benchmark style, isn't it? And when I tasted, I mean, I haven't tasted that many vintages, but I'm tasting it today, and I can't help but notice this distinctive minerality, the linearity of the wine, the elegance, and it's generous, but it's not fat. You know, it's sitting broadly on the palate, but it's not kind of blousy in absolutely any way. So it's not overtly rich or overtly bold. There's this lovely, warm, fleshy, ripe peach, citrusy fruit there, an abundance of it, which is really lovely. But also the vibrancy, the freshness, the acidity of the wine is so uplifting. It's so, it's got this lovely clean finish as well. So in a blind tasting, for example, it's not, okay, let me not say more. The point being, it's not the Napa Valley that people know of, the Napa. So is the style of Napa changing? Are wines now distinct? I found some of this myself when I was in Napa Valley, but I'd rather you say it. Is Napa Valley as a style evolving today?
So you have a couple of different things going. Michael could talk to Cabernet, but with Chardonnay, over the history of Chardonnay in Napa Valley, when it was first planted, a lot of it was planted up valley in the warmer region. And you saw the variety as we went through phylloxera and replanting, saw the variety actually kind of migrate down and settle into Canaros, which is a cooler region of Napa Valley, and I think it's found its home there. It did take us, 20 or 30 years, and phylloxera sped up that whole process, but that allows to give that balance. Everyone has their own style of winemaking and what style they prefer for their wines. We enjoy good acidity. The alcohols are going to be below 14%. And even though it's 40% new oak and aging in 8 months in barrels, it's the balance, and it's the type of juice, the lees that you're putting in there, how you stir it, and getting the right barrels. Pri can talk to, having great barrels also helps that wine come into balance there. And so we think all these things working together kind of have that balance of wine, and kind of continuity of vineyards is really important.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly harmonious. It's very well balanced. It's got this lovely creamy palate as well. And everything's there, but nothing's out of place. It's kind of, it's very, very enjoyable. So thank you. It's a good thing I've had my dinner, because otherwise I'd be reaching out for something cheesy or smoky. India is known for its smoky foods. I'm sure you've tried some on your visit here, or perhaps, but just something hearty and flavorsome, because there's so much flavor to be enjoyed in this glass that when you pair it with anything else in terms of food, then you really want that generosity of flavors coming through. And we all know there is no lack of good flavors in Indian cuisine. So this is a really enjoyable wine with all kinds of, quite a versatile one, I would say. So, but thank you for sharing this glass, and also for arranging for this bottle just to be sent across to me for tasting this evening. What a privilege. Thank you. Okay, well, Michael, we have your wines here too.
Yes.
Did I show the Cakebread Cellars? Sorry, I meant to show the bottle, but that's the
You
Cakebread
can never show it enough.
Sorry?
You can never show the label enough.
Oh, yes, of course. So that was a 2016. We just tried. It's lovely. It's from Napa Valley, which is written right at the back. And next up, we have Honig from Napa Valley, and we have a Cabernet Sauvignon right here in my glass,
Great.
waiting to be tasted.
And I
So
want
tell
to
us about
thank,
this one.
I would really like to thank Vishal and the team at Wine Park for getting you the bottle. Sometimes things don't happen as quickly as you'd hope, and they got right on it. And I'm glad you have the wine. And I know Bruce appreciates his importer getting you samples as well. So
Thank you.
so you have a glass. I have my own bottle.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and you showed the label Honig. My last name, I can't. It doesn't come through on mine for some reason.
Show it again.
Our symbol, Bruce's symbol is the nice grape cluster. My symbol is the queen bee because Honig, our last name, means honey in German. So if you see the Honig labels, you'll notice that all of them have that Napoleonic royal queen bee, and that's the relevance to our last name. But this is, the 2016. So I've always admired Cakebread, and Bruce and his family have done a great job, not only promoting their brand, but promoting the Napa Valley. And they've been very successful at making a number of different varietals. I am not that smart. And so what I realized very early on is I need to focus on what I think we do best here in Rutherford at our property. And that's why with Honig, we only have two wines, not only, but we specialize in two wines. Sauvignon Blanc is our white, Cabernet is our red. As many of the people on this call probably know, they're related to one another. So those are the two varietals that we've always grown here in our property. So when we started making wine 40 years ago, we decided that's what we're going to do. So there's no second labels, there's no Chardonnay. It's just a very focused approach. And not only does that help with the winemaking, but I think it also, for us, it helps with our marketing and our whole, the way we present ourselves around the world. But this is the 2016. What you talked and mentioned, and what I've always really enjoyed about the Indian culture is the flavors of the food. And with our wine, and maybe it's a little different, and Napa has it's a big tent in many ways in terms of, although it's a small area, there's many different styles and many producers that do different types of wines. But what we're trying to make is a wine that has a lot of flavor, really red fruits, plum, cherry, but it is not so high in alcohol that it overpowers the dish. So where many of my neighbors have tried to become the biggest Cabernet in the block, and that's a valid style and certainly relevant, and have shot up in their alcohols, we've tried to make something more of elegance, more finesse, more that's going to be the complement to the meal versus something that's going to really overpower and fight with the dish. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And I think the 2016 is a great representation of our winemaker, Kristen Belair, of her style and what she's trying to achieve with her, I think, very pretty, elegant style of Cabernet.
Thank you. Well, you know something, honestly, I was just tasting this wine and you lost me at delicious because it's just such a delicious wine. I was actually trying to look out for the alcohol level just as you were mentioning it. It's just over 14%, but honestly, it's totally hidden. And the only thing I can say about it is that it's hidden because there's so much abundance of perfectly ripe fruit in there. There's all kinds. There's blueberries, there's black cherries, there's plums, there's even maybe a touch of raspberry, but there's just a whole lot of black, ripe, perfectly ripe, not pruny in the least sense, just really lovely, lovely fruit in there. And this toastiness, the toastiness of the wine is quite, there's the spice and this interplay of a touch of maybe vanilla, some elements of maybe like a tea, almost like a bit like tea. So, but it's, again, incredibly well balanced. It's bold and vivacious, but it's not overweight in any way, not at all. It's just right. It's a nice buxom wine, I'd say. So well, not fat.
Well, that really is our goal, is to create something where, like you said, it's pretty, it's elegant, it's supple. You finish the bottle, you don't feel it's too hot and heavy. And Kristen has been amazing at creating that style for us for 2 decades now.
Well, I think I'm just being treated here because I have all these wines to taste, and I can let you talk about the wines, and I'm being spoiled. But I wanted to throw open a question which either any of you could take on. But I just wanted to understand, how is Napa Valley as a region evolving? What are some of the current threats, particularly in the wake of the recent fires, climate change, droughts? I mean, there are all these issues all around the world, but Napa Valley also. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing Napa Valley, and what's the plan?
I would say all of the above, really, especially in the last 3 years. And, Bruce and Michael will, of course, have a much more in-depth thought into this. But in the last few years, we've seen, with the earthquake that kind of started out this whole, natural disaster, what is our response program? How are we going to address these situations? We then went into wildfires, which resulted in power outages during harvest. So that became a whole other challenge. The weather is becoming more and more unpredictable. So there's a lot of focus on how are we evolving in terms of, as a grower, in terms of how we plant, how we farm, to kind of address the fact that it is getting warmer, that we are getting these heat spikes. And now COVID, this year has been a whole other revelation in, well, how do we manage to keep the winery efficient, to keep us to be able to process the fruit? Harvest is a short span of time, but there's a lot of activity that happens during those 2 months. But to be able to do it in a way that guarantees everyone's safety, first and foremost, I would say has been the biggest challenge for 2020. But luckily, when you're in a winery, sanitation is something that you're focused on. You're always sanitize. So at least, that aspect comes naturally. But I would say communication is huge. Having a group like the Vintners that is constantly bringing in feedback and giving out access to resources and ideas and inputs has been, for me, that's been a very incredible resource to have in this region.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, it's been a ruthless year, hasn't it, 2020, especially for the trade, and we're all reeling from the effects, and the after effects are probably going to be felt for a really, really long time to come. But I also wanted to, since you touched upon 2020, I wanted to ask, maybe Bruce and Michael could answer that, is how is, from a weather point of view, the 2020 vintage looking? How's the fruit quality? And because I was reading reports on Bourgogne, and they have had an exceptionally good vintage. They're looking good. So despite the adversities, there's been some silver lining there. But how's it going for Napa Valley in terms of the 2020?
Well, I think with 2020, we had very dry winter. And so this allowed the roots to get very deep during the spring. So dry spring, big root system. The growing season, I think, was ideal. We've had this warm spell. But I think the thing that kind of mitigates this early warm spell in August is that it did happen early. If we had the same warm spell, say the end of September, you may not have that color. But here, the vines are still growing. I was just out in the vineyards yesterday, and they're kind of weathering this heat, and it's a little bit more humid, so it's not the same type of heat that we might experience like in September. So I'm still fairly optimistic to be able to get through these fires, which we know we will, to be able to have a really excellent vintage. So I'm pretty excited about it. And what's interesting, we've been all making wines for a long time. Each vintage offers its own challenge. And that to me allows you to keep evolving, keep learning, and learning new skills. And that to me is what makes winemaking kind of fun.
Great. I am conscious of the time, and I also want to give an opportunity to our viewers to be able to throw some questions at us. Is that okay? Would that be all right? But I wanted to first very quickly ask, before we do that, I wanted to ask Michael. Michael, you are very passionate about philanthropy and environmental sustainability. There's a big story around that. And by the way, I couldn't get my hands off your posters, your postcards.
The postcards.
So much fun. I wanted to ask if I can download any of those.
I think they're all downloadable. And if you go to honigwine.com, everyone will understand what you're referring to.
Worthy.
Yeah, they're fun.
They were amazing. Guys, you should go on the website and check out the postcards of Honig, which is, I don't know, they're funny stuff. Game of
there's funny
Clothes,
things, yeah.
real house wines instead of housewives, real fun stuff. But anyway, do tell us about the philanthropy work and the environmental sustainability work that you're doing at Honig Vineyards.
Well, yeah, I mean, the community has always been very philanthropic and civic minded, as well as my family. We as a community have done a number of things to protect the environment, to protect our children, to help the medical community. My family is focused on a few things, and sustainability is very, very important to us. I mean, I live on my land. My children are growing up here. It's all we have. It's my grandfather's legacy, and I've always acted and told my family I will be the caretaker for my generation, the third generation, and we've got it set up to go to the fourth and fifth. So the example I use is how do we leave a small footprint for the next generation to step into? It's huge things like spending a lot of money on solar. It's buying electric cars. It's having electric charging stations. It's doing things like dry farming. It's a multitude of things that we can do, both big and small, to create a healthy environment for everyone. So I think where there's certain thing of organics or biodynamic that focus kind of on specific parts of the equation, we try to look at everything we do and say, okay, if we're doing it that way, is there a better way to do that one part of and create that goal of leaving it better for the next generation. So, and not only that, and not to make it a political statement, because I know some people don't believe in climate change and that's their prerogative, but it's qualitative also. Bruce and Brian will tell you, we grow grapes. We don't grow bottles on our vines. We grow grapes. We're farmers. If we don't start with a healthier, more flavorful grape, Bruce and Brian cannot take the worst grapes in the world and make great wine. It doesn't work. I know we can take the best grapes in the world and destroy it very easily. That's not that complicated, right? I mean, we can make some bad wine if we elect to. But so if we don't start with quality grapes, so again, whether you care about the environment or not, I believe the things we're doing in the vineyard are creating a healthier vine, better grapes that ultimately make better wines that we sell to India. Sorry, I do get passionate about these. Sorry.
No, but it's so evident, right? Like, amazing. And I'd love to hear more, but maybe.
Go ahead. We should answer the questions.
Or another bottle of wine on another
Yes,
day.
another bottle of wine. We'll keep going.
Right. Okay. Should we take some questions? I'm just looking through. There's some, but I did catch some questions from for some of you guys who when you registered, you actually submitted some of the questions, and maybe there are some of the questions that are coming up here again. There's a lot to read on the chat group, but anyone can take these answers. But one of the questions was, I think one of the effects of pandemic, we've touched upon that. I wanted to know, okay, a lot of them wanted to know what are the learning opportunities in Napa Valley. So UC Davis, guys, is definitely one of them. We have two of our speakers who've done agriculture and enology from UC Davis. So that should be your go-to place, no questions asked. But if anybody just wanted to know about how to study the business of wine, is there some university they could go to? Anything you recommend?
Sonoma State has a really good kind of wine business program. Sonoma State University, I think it is. They've done a really nice job to work on that education part of the business side of the wine business. And I know UC Davis is also incorporating more of the, have winemakers also be slightly business savvy is also important, but Sonoma State would be another alternative to look at.
Excellent. What are the current trends in Napa Valley? What's trending in terms of wine styles, but also vineyard practices or winemaking practices, anything? Maybe one each, if you could say. What's trending?
Should I start this one?
Yes, please. No, please.
So I think, Napa Valley has for the longest time had this image where when you said Napa Valley, you kind of equated it to Cabernet Sauvignon. And I think that people are finally realizing the spectrum of wines and winemaking styles and regions that can come out of Napa Valley. And I think that has been, for me, really exciting to just hear more about the unique wines that the producers are doing. And I think there's a lot of focus right now on highlighting the unique varietals, the story behind the vineyard, what the philosophy of that wine is. And I find it really exciting to just read that breadth of literature that is now available for Napa. I would say from a trend, what Michael touched on in terms of sustainability and being environmentally conscious. I find Napa is a big leader in that, in terms of LEED certifications, even how we're building the wineries. Napa is an ag preserve, and I think we take that responsibility very seriously. And to see as many growers willingly want to participate in programs that will inevitably result in protection of our natural resources has been very encouraging for me.
Amazing. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Did anybody else want to add on to that, or in any way? Or?
Napa Valley Vintners started the Napa Green program, Napa Green Land, and then in 2008, Napa Green Winery. And I think Michael's, both of us are both land and winery certified. And so that's a third-party inspection program that I think is pretty powerful and a good program that's suited for Napa Valley, for our region. And I think the really interesting thing is what can happen in the wineries to reduce the footprint and help educate each other. We can share each other's ideas to be able to learn more about how to reduce our footprint and make a difference in climate change, just not check a box.
Great. There are also some wine lovers listening in, and one of them asked, what, as a wine lover or as a wine enthusiast, what can I look forward to in Napa Valley? That's an easy one for me to answer, but I'm going to let one of you answer that. I'm tempted to answer, but Michael, maybe?
Well, are there other places in the world that make wine? I'm sorry. I thought it was all about the Napa Valley today, but look, we take what we are all very proud to be producing and making wine in the Napa Valley. But if you look to you and your peers and the people that matter in the wine world, the gatekeepers of the wine industry also say that Napa Valley makes some of the best wines in the world. So you can take our views or not, but and what I'm not sure what you're going to say specifically, but in general, people that really understand wine, people understand the science of winemaking, people that drink wines daily and really understand quality versus things that are inferior, know that Napa Valley is on the top.
I think to me, one of the things that makes, as Michael said, we have a great place to grow grapes, make great wine. It's really beautiful. You get up into the hills and go hiking or mountain bike riding. It is just gorgeous, beautiful up there. And the people are very nice. You break Napa down and it's really just a small ag community. Everybody knows each other. Kids go to school, you see everyone on the streets. And so it is a small community as well that supports each other. That makes it exciting to be in Napa.
No, I will definitely endorse that view, because one thing which is palpable when you come to Napa Valley is just the camaraderie that exists between the entire fraternity. And also I'd like to add to that is the larger than life hospitality. I mean, you guys have absolutely aced the tourism. I don't know, I'm forgetting the stats, but how many millions or billions does it contribute to the economy? I mean, the tourism is a real success story, and what you've done with that. So I want to ask you one last question. I know that Connor's on screen, but I know that's my cue to stop speaking. So I'm going to ask you one last question.
Keep on going. We have plenty of time. One more question around.
Question. And I want each one of you to give me at least 1 point, because as Indians, we all want to know. We all dream of a tomorrow which will be like a Napa Valley. We always think, oh, we'll have tourism, we'll have wine trails, we'll have hospitality, we'll have great wines. We do, some of them. But what is the one thing that India and its regions can learn from Napa Valley if we wanted to try and emulate your success story in the next 20 to 30 years? Because really for Napa Valley, it happened fairly quickly, isn't it? It's just, it's been less than one lifetime, one generation, that it kind of, from the 70s and 80s, and then it kind of really took momentum, and look where it is today. So what is the one thing that India can learn from Napa Valley?
As a producer, like as a wine region, is that what the question is?
Just whatever comes to your mind as thoughts.
I think Bruce and Michael, you guys should start on this one.
Please be honest. I mean, please be candid. I mean, not honest.
The only thing I can think of is for any area is to be authentic. you know, the millennials, you can't lie to them. People want real. So whatever you have as an area or a region, that's what you should be promoting. Don't be something you're not. So that comes to mind quickly for me.
Awesome.
I think for Napa Valley, it's a very welcoming place. Whether you're in the coffee shop or you come into the winery, everyone is excited to show you what they've done, and also be able to recommend their neighbor around the corner up the highway what they're doing too. And so everyone's sharing, and when you come to make wine in Napa Valley, everyone is very passionate to do their best. So it makes an exciting place.
And I'd like to add on to what Bruce just said. I mean, I think it's the community. I mean, everyone is friends with everyone. Everyone shares. If a pump breaks at a winery, you go to your neighbor's winery to borrow the pump for the afternoon. You share knowledge, you share wines, you have dinner together, you see the other winemakers out at the local restaurants. I think it's that sense of community that really brings Napa Valley together. And I know Michael and Priyanka and Bruce are just three members of a huge community in Napa dedicated to making some of we think, the greatest wines in the world.
I agree. I think strength in numbers, that's something. When the Vintners was founded, that was always the intention, that we're stronger if we all do this concerted effort together. And the Vintners have done it, over the years. I really do agree with what Michael said. Being authentic is so important, because that honesty always comes through in your product. Wine is a living, breathing product, and when it comes with that kind of philosophy and that kind of background, I feel like the connections it makes with the consumers is just more deeper at that level. And most importantly, I think, what people do enjoy about Napa, Sonal, and you touched on this, is hospitality. And no one does hospitality better than Indians. We really know, the guest is Atithi Devo Bhava. I mean, it's been in our culture from the beginning. And I think that if we just realize that and stress on how to make a more welcoming space for everyone who's interested in wine, from a newbie to someone who really wants to get into the nitty-gritties and the details of it, I think that we would expand our group of people that love wine in India very, very quickly.
Priyanka, thank you so much for saying that. If that doesn't get you an importer in India, I don't know what will. That was the clincher. That was really the clincher. You went straight there, into our hearts. Thank you for saying that. Guys, it's time for closing remarks. Although I could really go on and on, sipping on these wines and chatting with all of you. It's been truly, truly inspirational. Very, very positive, thought-provoking. You've left us with so many wine for thought, and so many great lessons to learn and to take away, and above all, such great insights into Napa Valley. I, for one, truly understand it better than I ever have before. Any amount of textbooks can't give you this level of real, authentic, on-the-ground insights that we have gained today. Priyanka, thank you for the inspiration that you are to so many hospitality professionals in India, and for your sheer passion for the vineyards, which came through so vividly. Bruce, for your vision for tomorrow, for your trailblazing achievements of yesterday, and just how effortlessly you assume leadership of the Napa Valley wine industry. It really just comes through, and it's so inspiring to watch. Michael, just for being you and just being so real. It's, the way that you worked towards your own family business, the passion, all your efforts in areas of sustainability. But if you'll allow me to say, and I hope you won't take offense, but there's such a real, authentic, a farmer at heart. And you like to keep it real. You have this simplistic approach to business that is just so endearing. So thank you for that. Thank you, Priyanka, Bruce, and Michael, for your valuable time today, and for the generosity of your knowledge, and for your such great words for India. We're all leaving on such a happy note. And on that note, I'd like to say onwards and upwards. Napa Valley rocks. And now India should not just talk, because Napa Valley rocks and India talks sometimes. So it's now time to walk the talk. That's the point I want to make at the end of today. It's time to start walking, guys. So On that
Or
note,
maybe
Connor,
even better, Sonal, is it time to start drinking the talk,
Yeah.
drinking the wine?
yes,
So,
I'm
well,
doing
Sonal,
that.
thank you so much for hosting us today. I mean, this is just an honor that you would host our first Napa Valley session specifically for India. We know we have many years, we have lots of hard work, but we have many years, many wines to drink in India. And we just say cheers and thanks to everyone who joined. And I hope everyone learned a little bit more about Napa Valley so that you can enjoy that next glass just a little bit more. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.
And have a good
Cheers,
night in
everyone.
India.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all for watching, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.